Hello, and welcome to This American Girl Reads. My name is Kirsten, and I'm excited to get started. Hi, like I said, my name is Kirsten. I decided to give this a whirl, see how it works out. So decided to start with the traditional All My Dolls video. So I'm going to go in order of when I got my dolls, because I find that's really interesting to see what kind of things brought people to each doll in what order. I know some people obviously, they get into collecting and they go all out and they're just buying everything. I've always taken a slightly different approach. So I just have been very, very conscientious and careful about how I've built my collection. And so that's why I thought it'd be interesting to start with chronological order. Okay, so my first doll was actually my childhood doll. I got her when I was 7 years old. I was a child of the 90s, if you can't tell by all the white in my hair. So when I was growing up, there was the original 5 historicals at the time. And in 1995, when I was 7 years old, was when they debuted the American Girl of Today line. And so my parents, who knew I was really interested in American Girl, they laid out a catalog, one of the catalogs I've been obsessing over, and they asked me, if you could have one doll, who would it be? Thinking it would be, Samantha or Addie or Molly. And instead, I flipped to the American Girl of Today section, and I pointed to number 17. My number 17's name is Donna. Please ignore the fact that she's still wearing her Hanukkah sweater. I haven't changed her yet because she looks so cute. I got Donna when I was 7 years old. She was kind of a huge purchase for my family. My parents had saved for a while to be able to get her for me. And they made it very clear to me that, this was a special doll. And so I was always very careful with her. I mean, not as careful as I should be. Her wig is a little thin. Her hair is a little fried. She's got little short end hairs all over the place. But generally speaking, I took very, very good care of Donna. I named her Donna after my 2nd grade teacher. Because yes, I was teacher's pet, if you couldn't tell. I loved her. Blue eyes like mine. Red hair, which I didn't have as a kid, did have for, teenagehood into young adulthood. And now my hair is very auburn in the summer, but is, as I said, going white. So not so red anymore. So she was never meant to be my look-alike. She was meant to be kind of what Pleasant Rowland had kind of envisioned, which was my friend. So I played with her. So technically, I put my dolls away when I was 11, but I actually secretly played with my dolls up through high school. And so eventually she went away, and we packed her away, and then we fast forward to the year 2021. It's May, and American Girl has their big 35th anniversary re-release of the original 6 dolls. It was 6, yes, so they did do Josefina. So we fast forward to there. The original 6 are re-released, and at this point, I'm married, I own a house, I have a job. Me and my partner don't have any children and don't plan to, and I saw that the 35th anniversary dolls came out, and I, at this point, at the time where I live, we had an American Girl store, and sometimes when my partner and I were out on dates, we would actually stop by the American Girl store, and I would just browse and look around and pine and be amazed at how different the brand was and how many different historical eras they had now. But it never actually occurred to me for some reason that I could get a doll. I have no idea why, for some reason, that didn't land, but it didn't. Until 2021, when the originals came out, and I saw an ad for them come across, I think, my Facebook, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's the originals. Oh, I want them so bad. And for whatever reason, this time it clicked that I'm an adult. I have adult money that I can do what I want with. And so I went out and I bought Molly. Molly had some of my favorite books when I was a kid, because one of the things about me is that while I did have a doll growing up, I only had one. And we didn't have a ton of clothes for her. We had a fair amount, but not a ton. It wasn't a huge collection. And so my connection to American Girl was actually primarily through the books, which I read obsessively, American Girl magazine, which I had a subscription to for many, many years, and the plays that you can kind of see right back here, these modern plays that American Girl wrote and put out. So Molly had some of my favorite stories because she was an absolute brat, and I love that about her because I can be an absolute brat. And I found her a lot more relatable than a lot of the other girls because, you know, Addie and Samantha are so selfless. Felicity's a horse girl, and not me. No, not a horse girl. And Josefina came out really, like, I wasn't really paying much attention to Josefina at the time. And she was also just, like, so kind. And, like, I was a brat, okay? I was a brat. And so Molly was my girl. Her saves the day story, for whatever reason, stuck in my head like none other. I so desperately wanted to have a color war at summer camp every year, and none of the camps I got to go to ever did a color war, which was like such a betrayal, by the way. So yeah, when they came back out, I had to have Molly, and you can see that I've taken her hair out of her braids, which is probably, you know, sacrilege, especially since I can't do hair. I don't know. I mean, I can do braids, so I can probably get her hair back to something decent, but I'm not good at hair. And I was so excited to have her. Immediately went on to eBay and was like looking for some more outfits for her, especially her Camp Go On Again outfit, because I needed to be able to live out my color war dreams. And then I started, you know, doing searches for the books again because I wanted to reread them. And my mom, who has always been very supportive and just a really wonderful influence in my life. I'm an only child. It becomes very obvious later on that I'm an only child. My mom has always been really supportive. She got on board, and she's eBay queen, so she was looking around and finding things, and down the rabbit hole we went. If the clips look different in between, it is because I am stopping and starting, and I'm going to edit this together just because I am not capable of sitting and talking for long periods of time, just so you know. All right, so after I had Molly and I was going down the rabbit hole, I knew that my next purchase was going to be Addie, the 35th anniversary Addie. I really desperately wanted her. Her books were probably some of my second. I mean, Molly's books were my favorite from a relatable standpoint. Addie's books were my favorite from a this is a really good story and an important story kind of standpoint. So I knew I was going to buy Addie next, and I started saving my money. But meanwhile, my mom, who again, like I said, was going down this rabbit hole with me and was like all over eBay, was like, you know, oh, you know, who else was, you know, your favorites when you were a kid? Wasn't Samantha like a really big character to you? And I was like, oh yeah, no, I love Samantha. And fun fact about me, while I didn't get into American Girl until 2021. I already was a collector, but of Sherlock Holmes stuff. I'm a big Sherlock Holmes collector. So I was also very into the Victorian and Edwardian period. And then one day I went and I opened my front door, and there was a box on the doorstep, and I had this girl. My mom had found, I think late 90s, early 2000s. I'm not big on dating dolls, really. That's just not my thing. There's lots of other channels out there if you want to like get ideas about how to date your dolls. I'm not your girl. But yeah, I think she's a late 90s, early 2000s Samantha, and my mom had found one new in box and had purchased her for me and sent her to me because she also really likes Samantha. My mom is a seamstress and big into fashion history, and of course we have a deep fondness for Victorian and Edwardian. We do know that Samantha is Edwardian in this household. But we love that fashion, and, you know, Samantha also has some very fun, if slightly uneven stories, if we're being honest, if we think about, like, the different themes that each book explores, and, like, the weird middle years when they got a different author and, like, dropped some things because they were getting a little too real there, and then came back. Like, it's a whole thing. Anyway, I really did enjoy Samantha's stories, and I always loved her collection. I always thought her collection was very pretty. I was not a big girly girl as a kid, but I can appreciate a nice dress, like a lot of people can. So I did really want Samantha, and she was going to be on my list ultimately. I just wasn't expecting to get her so soon. So that was a big surprise to get Samantha. I actually, to be honest, I bought my Molly through the online store. And it's possible Samantha actually arrived first. So she may have technically been my second doll, but Molly was the second doll that I knew about and had purchased. So I love my Samantha. She doesn't get enough attention in my collection just because I have so many other dolls. But I do have a fair number of her outfits. And she's so pretty. She's so pretty. Look at her little face. Isn't it cute? So at that point, I have Donna, who I think at that point had made it back to my house here. I'm in Ohio. Had made it from my parents' house back to my house. And then I added Molly, and I had Samantha, and I knew I was going to get Addie. I was taking a little while to save. But like I said, somebody's setting off fireworks. Don't know why. Like I said, for a lot of collectors, you get started and it just kind of becomes an avalanche. And I am no exception. I avalanched. I just avalanched with a very specific direction that I was going. And so even though I was in the process of saving for Addie, I jumped the gun. We went to the American Girl store and I got Miss Addie and I was so excited! Addie is my favorite doll. Don't tell the others. Don't tell the others. But Addie is my favorite doll. I have actually recurring dreams. We're not going to ask about why I have these dreams, but I have recurring dreams where my house is burning down or I'm having to flee and I can only take one doll. And even my subconscious knows it's Addie. I am bringing this girl. I love her. She's just so beautiful. And the Addie face mold it's either my first favorite or my second favorite. The Claudie face mold, spoilers. The Claudie face mold really gets me. I do really love the Claudie face mold as well. So here's Miss Addie. Purchased her, and that was going to be it for a while, in all honesty. Buying 2 dolls myself, and this was at the full price for the 35th anniversary doll. So that was like $150 a piece. Like, I have a job and I have adult money, but I am not made of money. And so I needed to slow down, and I knew it. But I was so satisfied to have my 3 favorites from my childhood, as well as my actual childhood doll. And I was continually at that point looking for outfits online and buying them off of eBay and Mercari. I hadn't really discovered Facebook at that point, either the groups or Marketplace. So I wasn't looking on those sources, but I'm on eBay a lot. So yeah, Ms. Addie was my 4th doll and my favorite of all time. But again, we're not telling the other girls that. So the question of who my next doll is actually kind of up in the air depending on how one counts. And I'll explain what I mean when I get there. So yeah, at this point I have my 4 dolls. I'm super happy. I'm taking truly terrible photos out in my backyard. Really didn't know anything about photography at that time. Still don't know anything about photography, to be very clear, but have learned through some actual experience now. So taking truly terrible photos outside while also looking on eBay on a regular basis to try and find more outfits for my 4 dolls. I'm at that point looking for the American Girl of Today outfits that I didn't have as a kid that I always, secretly coveted. I'm looking for, of course, the historical outfits. And at that point, I realized you can buy dolls on eBay too. Like, of course I knew this because my mom had bought a new in-box Samantha, but I assumed that the new in-box Samantha was, really, really expensive. I don't know. My mother has never shared that information with me, but I discovered TLC dolls. And so did my mother at the same time. And so we were going through and looking at dolls and getting excited about, different dolls and trying to learn to fix dolls. And my next doll was sent to me by my mother in extreme TLC condition. This girl's legs were falling off. And I had no idea how to fix them. I didn't know how to tighten limbs at the time. I knew that you probably could from, my deep dive at that point into AGTube. But I didn't personally know how, and I have rheumatoid arthritis, so the idea of tightening limbs with my very weak and spindly hands was really kind of scary. But I got Kaya, Like I said, when I got her, her legs were falling off. She couldn't stand. I mean, literally, like, you could see the elastics holding her legs to her body. She was not in great shape. My Kaya also has like a little bit of a wonky eye here, which doesn't bother me. I don't really notice a lot of doll defects. But yeah, so my first pictures of Kaya were of her laying in a doll bed that I had made from a garden planter, and you know, the dolls standing around her hoping that she was going to feel better soon. And the reason that I don't know if she was technically my next doll or if my next doll was my next doll is because my parents and I my parents live in Michigan, I live in Ohio, and every summer we arrange to meet halfway and have a picnic together. And so I brought Kaya because my mom had also been doing research on how to tighten limbs, and my mom had at the time stronger hands than I did, so she was going to help fix Kaya here. But when I got there, what I discovered was that she had practiced limb tightening in advance on Kit. So she gave me Kit that day, who she had actually tightened her limbs in advance because she was practicing to make sure that she knew how to do it so she could help me with it. If you hear my cat, I'm sorry. My cats aren't allowed in the doll room, but one of them, Moriarty, has a slight separation anxiety when I'm in here, so you might hear her crying. So yeah, my mom gave me Kit that day, and we tightened Kaya's limbs in the trunk of my mom's car. It was 101 degrees out that day, which was not the best circumstances for trying to tighten limbs, but it certainly made an experience, and I was so excited to have Kit. Kit came out towards the end of when I was still paying attention to American Girl, and I never read her stories when I was a kid. But I really loved like, a doll with short hair just is so exciting to me because I don't have to do anything with it. I don't have to try and learn how to do hair. Like, I can just brush it, put a little clip in, and be done. That is amazing to me. Yes, that is the level of hair care that I am ready for. So I always really liked the idea of her, but I never read her stories. And so after I got Kit, I made a point of reading all of her books, and that just made me fall in love with her more. I think if there is an American Girl, I mean, other than the brattiness of Molly, but if there's an American Girl that I was most like as a kid, it would have actually been Kit. I really related to Kit's stories as well in a strong way, even as an adult. So I'm very excited to have Kit. She's just such a pretty doll, and she's so special to me because my mom taught herself how to tighten limbs on this doll so that she could help me, since I don't always have the hand strength to do it. And I mean, that's just such a special memory for me and my mom. Okay, so clearly different day, different outfit. I got sick. I wasn't going to film when I was sick. I'm more of a, slow and steady wins the race kind of person. So shout out to all of you creators out there who do your All My Dolls videos in one go. Couldn't be me. So where I left off, all those dolls I purchased in May and June of 2021. And at that point I realized, oh no, this is going to be a thing, right? So at that point I said, okay, I need to figure out what I want the purpose of my collection to be. What is my focus going to be as a collector? And being a 90s child, I decided my focus was going to be the historical dolls, because that's what I grew up with. That is what I have the fondest memories of. That is what I remember, carrying the catalogs around with and circling and, longing for but never asking for, just because I already had my doll. I knew I wasn't gonna get another one. And I love Donna, and I still love Donna, and Donna's amazing. So I decided my focus was going to be historical, and my original doll, Donna, was going to represent the 90s. And that was my plan. And so I looked at all the historicals. I was going to be a historical collector, but that didn't necessarily mean I was going to collect every single historical, but I was going to be historical focused. Roll around to my birthday. I have a birthday in September, and my mom gives me a gift, because of course she does, because my mom avalanches along with me, and she gave me Cecile. I need you to all to to stop and think for a moment and do the count. She's like, what, my 7th doll? I get Cecile as my 6th or 7th doll? What? Like, Cecile for so many people is a Grail doll, and I get her as my 7th doll. I'm pretty sure my 7th, again, not having filmed consecutively and having been many days, I don't have the count in my head. Yeah, I get her so early in collecting. I mean, I opened her and I just stared in shock because what the heck? Being kind of a brat, I looked at my mom and I was like, please tell me you got a good deal for her. Because, like, I've been in collecting long enough now and been doing enough research to know that Cecile is a lot of people's Grail, and she doesn't always go for, reasonable prices. Mom's like, yeah, I don't know what happened. Somebody didn't know what they had and nobody else saw the listing, I guess, because Mom snapped her up. So I have Cecile. Her hair's not in perfect condition. There's some people who prefer to wait for a mint doll who's perfect. I am not one of those people. I learned how to do some basic curl restoration on my Cecile, which I guess is not what most people would want their first curl restoration doll to be. But I have Cecile, and I have her here in Elizabeth's riding gown because the joy about riding frocks is that they didn't change a lot for a very long time. Historically speaking, they became riding costumes. And so I like to imagine that Cecile, given her background, may have gone on occasion on a riding tour, trip. I don't know. I don't like horses. May have gone riding occasionally and may have worn something along these lines. So yeah, that is Cecile. So Cecile was a surprise and a gift from my mom, but I had actually been saving and planning for what I wanted my next doll to be, which was going to be Melody. Because Melody, when I discovered that there was a doll from Detroit who was a singer, my heart about leapt out of my chest and went running to go buy Melody immediately, because I am from Detroit and I am a singer. And so in October of 2021, I got Melody. So I love her, but I will say I bought Melody in the store in the AG Columbus. No, actually, I bought her online. Like, even though AG Columbus was like, it was 10 minutes from my house. For some reason, I bought Melody online. I think there was like a sale one weekend online only. And so I bought Melody that weekend. And at the time, even though I had been pretty deep in the weeds at this point in AG doll research, I could not tell the difference between the old Sonali mold and the new Sonali mold. And to be honest, I love her face. I think she has a beautiful face, even though I can tell now that she is the new Sonali mold. What I do have trouble with sometimes is her bangs are very thin. Like, I have a doll with very, very thin bangs. And I will admit, if I could do it all over again, I think I would have gone onto eBay and found a Melody with some of the thicker, longer bangs, because I really do love the look of thick, long bangs as I fix my own thick, kind of long bangs. So I really do like that. But I am also someone who bonds very closely with my dolls and with the doll, not the character, although I do bond with the character. I loved the character of Melody before I got the doll. But I get my doll and I bond with the doll. And so to me, even though I sometimes look at Melodies with the longer bangs and go, oh, I wish I had a Melody with longer bangs, I could never let this doll go. I could never let my Melody go. Next up, we have another gift that I got, this time from my partner, and that's Rebecca. I got Rebecca as a Hanukkah gift in 2021 from my partner, along with several of her items that came from the store at the time. So her newest Hanukkah dress, her sideboard, her Hanukkah items, her tea items, and all of that. So she was a very lovely gift from my partner. And she is definitely in my top 5 of my historical dolls. She's very precious to me. About the time that I got her was when I decided that it was really important to me to collect all the Jewish dolls that American Girl had ever released, which at the time was 2. So not exactly a hard job. Even if one of them was Lindsay, who I knew was going to be harder. But yeah, so I got Rebecca, and she is very, very precious to me. She's one of those ones where if I could only keep a few in my collection, she would be one of them, in part because of my personal connection with her from a story and faith perspective, but also because my partner got her for me, and my partner knows nothing about American Girl. You know, I will sometimes say, oh, hey, honey, can you go grab so-and-so for me from the doll room? And he's like, oh no. And he does. He's worked very hard to know who my dolls are. He tries so hard, but for him to get me a doll was very, very special. And I have her dressed here in my favorite of Rebecca's outfits, her first Hanukkah outfit, which if you've read her books, you know that it was also originally her Rosh Hashanah dress, that her mother then, her sisters actually let out the seams so that she could wear it again for Hanukkah because she loved the dress so much and she wanted to be able to rewear it again, but she had grown. And also I told a friend that when I started editing the first clips, that I needed to shorten my clips because this is going to be way too long, and I have not succeeded in that. So onward! Next we have a doll that I got in March of 2022. So I got Rebecca December of 2021, took a little break for a while, spent some time with my dolls, continued to analyze how I wanted to grow my collection, knew I wanted to continue with the historicals, and so next up was Nanea. She's just so pretty. I think I truly have a very, very lovely Nanea. I've seen some that people have not enjoyed the look of, and I can sometimes see a difference between my Nanea and theirs, but I just think I have a really lovely Nanea, and she's here wearing a sweater because, she's Hawaiian and is not entirely comfortable in these Midwest winters. But yeah, I picked her out in store and I brought her home so excited, and I opened her up and I was playing with her wig, and as it turns out, my Nanea has a slight wig defect. It has like a lump in it from where the wig cap got bunched and didn't get glued down properly. I contacted a few people, actually on Tumblr, who collect American Girl dolls, and I was like, is this going to create a problem? Because I have bonded with this doll at this point. I have stared at her for about an hour and fallen in love with her, and if I have to take her back to the store because this little wig bump is going to be a problem, I am going to cry. And they told me, nope, it shouldn't really create a problem. You should just always be careful when you're brushing that area of the hair so that your wire wig brush doesn't get caught on it. And so I was so happy to be able to keep this Nanea because she's just so lovely. I'm always surprised by people who say that they don't like the Nanea face mold because it doesn't look like an American Girl doll. And of course, they're entitled to their opinion. Everybody has the face molds that they connect with and don't connect with. That's totally fine. But I just think she's so pretty and has such a beautiful, caring face with some nice cheekbone structure, some little chubby cheeks with a slightly pointier chin. I think she's gorgeous. So I have a confession. I am not a big Julie fan. I have read her books, and I will say I do enjoy her books, and I enjoy the story in her books, and it does make me like Julie the character, but why would I want Julie when Ivy's right there? I love Ivy. I love her in the books, and I thought the doll was really interesting. The history of the doll in the good way and the bad way, that she's, the only Asian American historical doll, which is, it would be nice if she was the first Asian American historical doll and not the only. The way that they, didn't do very good by her collection by giving her so little as compared to other best friends. In looking at my she's the only best friend doll that I own. Spoiler alert. The other best friend dolls, some of those characters I love very much, but I don't really feel a pull towards the doll itself. Ivy was different though. I was very, very interested in getting an Ivy. I was not interested in paying Ivy prices. I'm a collector who I'm very careful with how I spend my money. I have limits on how much I'm willing to spend on a doll. I respect and appreciate people who are able to save up or just have that money available to put towards a doll whenever. There's no shade in how you spend your money as long as you know that you are doing it responsibly for yourself. However, I have a certain amount that I am not willing to pay above for a doll. There may be exceptions in the future for some of the really rare ones that are on my list. Ivy was not one of the ones that I was willing to pay Ivy prices for, because I knew Ivy can be found for a reasonable price. And I found my Ivy for a very, very reasonable price. What I didn't know is that she has actually had a little bit of her haircut here in the front. I don't think I can really get it to stay. It's just a little tiny bit. Yeah, there you go. You can kind of see it here. Just a little bit. It's not a lot, and it's very easy to push back and out of the way, so you can't really tell. But it was not disclosed I bought her off of Mercari. It was not disclosed in the Mercari listing, but frankly, again, I got her, I fell in love with her, there was no going back, and so I'm very, very happy to have an Ivy in my collection, and she represents my 70s decade, rather than poor Julie. After purchasing Ivy, who was admittedly a little bit of a spur-of-the-moment purchase, just because I found a good listing, I decided that I was going to save up for Josefina next. And I saved the money. I had the money in July of 22 and planned on going exactly which day I was going to go to the AG Columbus store and pick out my doll. And unfortunately, the night before, my cat passed away. Very unexpectedly. We had to take him to the vet in the middle of the night and put him to sleep. So the day that I planned to get Josefina, we had barely slept the night before. We were both very distraught about our cat. But I don't know why, but we decided we were going to go to the Columbus store anyway. And I got my Josefina. And while that's a really sad story, at least it is to me, maybe you don't care, that's totally fine. I think it was in some ways very appropriate that I got Josefina when I needed some healing. Josefina's stories are all about her wanting to be a healer and being a gentle soul who takes care of those around her. And in so many ways, getting Josefina after my cat had, not even 12 hours after my cat had passed away, was actually a really important and useful decision in helping me through the grieving process. Up to this point, I have done very well at being a historicals only collector. I have stuck with my collection plan, there has been no variations, and then the World by Us line dropped. And I fell hard in love with the concept of the line, with all the dolls. I bought all of their books and read their stories and loved them. And so, of course, this is where it all began to fall apart, if I'm being honest. Most people avalanche at the beginning. I definitely had my own avalanche at the beginning. But this is where my collection kind of began to explode. Because I got McKenna. I love her wig. I just think it's so fun and different, and I love that AG was trying to do something different. You know, the execution is maybe not the best, maybe not the most realistic, but I still really appreciate the effort, and I love the style. I actually really love the McKenna mold. I know a lot of people don't, but McKenna actually looks like a student I once had. Very, very strongly looks like a student I once had, who I absolutely adored. So I love having her as a reminder of this student in my life. I did take off, which side? I did take off her bottom lashes, which I think actually for me helped. I'm not a big fan of the bottom lashes on dolls. And so I added her, and what I told myself was, McKenna's still a historical. She represents the 2020s, and so she'll be my 2020s historical doll. Yeah, that's what's gonna happen. And then it's August, and I go up to Michigan to visit with my parents and celebrate my mother's birthday. And my mom and I decide that we're just going to do all of our birthday gifts, because my birthday's like 15 days after her. We're going to do our birthday gifts all together. And my mom gives me Lindsay. She knew I wanted to collect all the Jewish dolls. Boom, done. But I have to tell myself something, right? So I say, oh, well, okay, so my original doll, Donna, is my 1990s doll, and McKenna is my 2020s doll, so Lindsay is my 2000s doll. Yes, that is how I'm going to justify having her in my collection. Please excuse the fact that she is still wearing her Hanukkah outfit. I just think she's really cute, and I've actually given her, at least for now, Rebecca's hair barrette, because I like to imagine that Lindsay is actually a descendant of Rebecca, and that Rebecca is somewhere in her family tree. My Lindsay's hair is a little dry, and part of me wants to like try washing it to see if that can give it back some of its softness. But I also just kind of love the weird, fun curls she has. Lindsay's my little chaos gremlin. I think she's just such a fun character in her books, in how she wants to help everyone and do good, and just has no concept of what that looks like, and you know how frustrating she can be. And so I call her my chaos gremlin. And she's always causing problems. And my Lindsay also has very loose limbs. I need to tighten them, but again, because of my hands, I kind of need some help with that. As it turns out, my partner is terrified of dolls when their heads aren't on, so he can't help me. So I have to meet up with some friends at some point to tighten some of my doll's loose limbs. But yeah, so this is my Lindsay. I'm so happy to have her. I love that I can officially say that I had, at this point, I was so proud that I could officially say I had all the Jewish dolls that American Girl had ever made. She's such an important part of my collection, and I consider part of my 90s world. World by Us line was a little bit of a surprise for me, so McKenna was kind of an impulse splurge buy. But we did have rumors about a 1920s doll come out fairly well in advance, and so I was aggressively saving my money because I knew that I wanted to get this doll on day one. I work at a university. At the time, I was working in the university library with a lot of other people around my age, and they too had fond American Girl memories. And so I told them, you know, there's this doll, her name is Claudie, she's coming out, you know, this is the day, don't expect anything from me on that day because it's Claudie Day. And so I actually have a note in my calendar, my personal calendar, just Claudie Day, that I had circled and marked and was like, I am going to the store right after work to get everything that I can of this Claudie doll. And so Claudie Day came, and when everything dropped online around 9 a.m., I was sending the links to my coworkers on Teams and being like, look at this doll, isn't she great? And my partner arranged to actually pick me up early. I actually left work early that day, and we went to the American Girl Columbus store, and I got Claudie! I love Claudie. I think this is one of the best things American Girl has done in modern history. The World by Us line is another one of them. Rest in peace, you went too soon. But Claudie here is she's either my first or second favorite doll. I really couldn't say. It's between her and Addie. But I adore Claudie. I did indeed purchase basically everything from her, all the smaller pieces from her collection on day one, all of her outfits, her accessory sets and everything. As of recording this, I have everything from Claudie's collection, everything. But at the time, I just got her initial starting outfits, not the Harlem Fashion Row inspired ones, although I do have those now. And I got some of her accessory sets, and she was the first big release that I was ready for on day one, got to experience on day one, and got to experience in that way. And it was very special to me. And Claudie's just a very special doll. I love her stories. They're so well written. They're so interesting. They're so important. I really wish American Girl would do more with her and put some more things in her collection, because she just deserves so much. And I want American Girl to make it hard for me to spend enough money on her and her collection. Come on, American Girl, let me throw my money at you. I am ready. Shortly after Claudie was released, they ended up slightly undercutting her by releasing all the new Truly Me's. And even though I was a historical collector, I suddenly had plans. I suddenly had ideas for stories, for dolls when I looked at the new Truly Me line. And again, sometimes I'm really slow in making connections, even though I know that they're there. And for me, the important part of the dolls is the stories. I care about their books. I care about the sort of story that they're telling the world and telling young girls. And so that's the most important thing to me for American Girl. That's just the kind of era that I was raised in with American Girl. And, you know, that's why this channel is This American Girl Reads, is because I have read all of the historical books, every single one. And so when the new Truly Me line came out, there was one doll in particular that I was like, I know what her story is. I have a story for her. And that began, again, the biggest avalanche of all, which is rather than restricting my collection to strictly historicals, and that was the point where I said, I'm going to have modern girls and I'm going to have modern stories for them as well. And then I got, in December of 2022, TM 112. This is Carnes. Her name is actually, my parents had considered naming me Carnes because it's a combination of my mom's first name and my dad's mom's first name. My dad hated the name, so they didn't end up naming me that, but I always thought it was very sweet that my parents were looking for some way to honor their parents, and I'm not having kids, so this is the closest it's gonna get. So this is Carnes. I'm not gonna get into her story because I'm trying to keep this video shorter. It's not working. Carnes became the doll that kind of opened the door for me to no longer focus strictly on historicals. Just because I wasn't focusing strictly on historicals, though, didn't mean that I wasn't still collecting them. And for the holidays that year, my mother got me Kirsten. She was an original early 90s Kirsten. She's not a white body, so after they had transitioned over to the tan bodies, but she does have the soft, squishy vinyl. You might be thinking, Kirsten, why did you not already have Kirsten? And it's actually because I hated this doll as a child. When you are a small child named Kirsten with blue eyes, and your hair is kind of blondish because you're 5-6 years old and people know about this doll, everybody expects you to get Kirsten as your doll. And I have never, I know people love to have mini-me's and look-alike dolls, but that's never been something that I've particularly been interested in. And so the idea of getting a doll that has a different pronunciation of my name, a name that people say wrong all the time, and I'm always having to correct them, who kind of looks like me. Yeah, no, that wasn't happening. I had no interest in this doll, but I had, many years later, I was 34 in 2022, something like that. I've grown, I've aged, I've gotten comfortable with being a Kirsten that nobody can pronounce my name correctly. And I always liked Kirsten's stories. They were the only box set that I had as a kid. I was never a Laura Ingalls Wilder kid. I was a Kirsten kid when it came to the stories. And she's a really pretty doll. Like she might be, other than Kit, one of the first blondes in my collection. I love the details in her collection, and so I was very happy to receive her, even if my childhood was one spent absolutely hating this poor doll who I love so much now. Then the last thing I did in December of 2022 was look at my beloved 112 and think about her modern story and go, well, she can't be my only modern doll. She can't be alone. How is she going to have friends? Who am I going to take pictures with? And so I ordered my first CYO. CYOs are the cap of how much I am willing to pay for a doll. Technically, they're a little pricey, but I use them as kind of a, different kind of celebration for different capstones in my life. And so I made Miri to celebrate that. Miri here is short for Miriam. She is a Jess mold CYO with the red pixie cut and green eyes, if you can see. Yeah, green eyes and freckles. And she represents a lot of different, hello lighting, there we go. She has her own fun story, but again, I'm not getting into stories, but she was the last American Girl purchase that I made at the end of 2022. I love her. I'm so glad I was able to get her before the pixie cut went out of stock and out of the CYO shop. She's the only CYO I own, at least as of now. Never say never. I'm in grad school right now, so I have a doll that I have in mind for when I'm getting ready to graduate from grad school. But yeah, this is Miri. I love her. All right, we're going to have to start speeding through these because I'm realizing that this video is way too long for a first video. So February of 2023, I took a look at the American Girl landscape, and I kind of felt like The World by Us would probably be retiring pretty soon. So I went ahead and got my next doll, Maritza. You might be wondering why Yvette is not in my collection, and that is actually because I got Yvette for my mother in December of 2021. Is that right? No, December of 2022. I got my mom, Maryellen, her very first American Girl doll in December of 2021. So at that point, I had McKenna and my mom had Yvette, and I really, really wanted Maritza. I think she's a very beautiful doll. I did take off her bottom eyelashes like the second that I got her, because I'm not a big fan of the bottom eyelashes on a lot of dolls. I don't always take them off, but for some dolls I think it helps sweeten their expression, and Maritza was one of them. So got her February of 2023. And yes, just for clarity's sake, it is a different day. It is actually sunlight outside. I have just showered. We're working to get through this. So February of 2023, I also got another doll. I can't remember exactly when these dolls came out, but of course, as soon as the 90s dolls came out, I went to the store and I had to get my Nicole. I don't call her Nikki. I was a 90s kid. None of the Nicoles in my class went by Nikki. Everybody went by Nicole. There were 3 Nicoles in my class. And so I call this sweetie Nicole. And I have a significant amount of her collection. I decided not to collect Isabel. I know that I said I was going to collect all the American Girl Jewish dolls, and so theoretically that would mean I should also add Isabel, but she just isn't a doll that really appeals to me. I think it's the combination of the eyebrows, the blonde hair, and the Felicity green eyes, which I actually quite like the Felicity green eyes. I just don't tend to like them in that combination of features. But I do love Nicole, and more importantly for me, Nicole is more reflective of what my 90s childhood looked like, whereas Isabel was the 90s childhood that I didn't always get along with. So I had to get Nicole instead. As it turns out, one of the downsides to filming during the day is that the light is going to change pretty consistently, but we're going to roll with it. We're just going to keep going. So 2023 was when I started really getting engaged with my store, the Columbus store, more often. And that year I was very lucky to get to go to the Girl of the Year launch. I don't really collect Girl of the Year as a line. I have 4 Girls of the Year. I think you've only seen Lindsay so far. So I don't really collect Girl of the Year, but I wanted to go to the Girl of the Year launch because, just for fun, see what things are out there, meet with my friends, things like that. But then I actually saw the 2023 Girl of the Year covey, and I was already kind of curious about her because she is, light change, because she is a theater girl, and I was a theater girl growing up. I still do theater. It's how my partner and I met. But I was still like, maybe I'll get some of the theater girls collection, but I don't, maybe I don't need the theater girl. And then I saw her and I was like, oh no, she's cute. So I ended up getting Covey in April of 2023. I love her. I do a series every summer showcasing what it's like to put on a community theater production. And Covey is always one of the lead characters in that because I like to think that she is growing and developing in her acting skills and is really, her stories, have her in the chorus and having to struggle to deal with what it means to be in the chorus instead of the lead. And so I'm giving her pathways as she moves forward into what being a lead also entails. The chorus is important, but a lead has a different set of responsibilities as well. And I like to tell that story with Covey every summer. At that point, I started thinking about how to do doll repair because I have a couple of dolls in my collection that need some help. Still haven't necessarily gotten to them, but I started looking online for a doll that I could maybe experiment on, and that is when I got Indy, my Truly Me 39. When I got her, her arms were they were covered in blue ink, and her hair was thrashed. She had no neck. Her neck strings were cut so short and were so shredded that they were in terrible condition. And I got her for like $20 so that she could be my experiment doll. And she was originally intended to just be a doll to practice and experiment on, but then I got her and I named her Indigo, or Indy for short, after the ink on her arms. And I developed a story for her, and I then had to fix her up so that she could actually be a real doll and not an experimental doll. And I actually, Christy from AG Takes Over is actually a local friend of mine, so I went over to her house and she actually showed me how to fix Indy's hair, because I don't know how to do hair. I don't know how to fix hair. I don't even own a flat iron or a straightener. I don't know what they're called. The things that you like grab and it presses and it makes the hair really straight. I don't know. So she showed me, she is the one who actually kind of fixed most of Indy's hair and showed me how to do that. And then of course, because I had given her a story, I actually made her a foster kid, and I gave her a foster sister, Lily. Lily was also, she's a TM, a Truly Me 40, and she was also being sold as a TLC doll for about $30. She had exactly one spot of ink on her arm, like, and it was like that big. It was so tiny. It was like, so I'm like, okay, if this is what counts as TLC, like, I'll take the price, but it took exactly one day of doing the benzoyl peroxide treatment in the sun. One day. And then she was basically brand new. So this is Lily. She is sisters with Indy in my stories. And I'm very lucky to have a Truly Me 40. She's very pretty, and I love her story, and I love her style, and she's just super fun and cute. So then we hit July of 2023, and I meet my parents in a park, because we sometimes meet halfway between Michigan and Ohio and just have a picnic in the park together. And my mom pulled out a surprise for me. She had gotten me Marisol. Now, Marisol is interesting in my collection because I never had her on a list. She was not a doll I was looking for. She was not even on a maybe someday if I find the right deal kind of list, because I do have those lists as well. She was not on any list at all. But my mom is from Chicago, and Marisol is from Chicago. And when my mom found out, she's like, okay, well, I have to have her, and I don't need her, so I'm going to give her to Kirsten. At this point, by the way, my mom has 2 dolls. She currently has 4. So I think she probably could have taken Marisol. But the reason she ended up giving me Marisol also was because, like I said, I was doing in the summer a photo storyline with Covey, learning, doing a play. That was the summer that we were doing Oliver, the musical. And mom wanted to make sure that, Covey was acting and my doll, my CYO Miri, was stage managing. And she was like, well, you need to have a dancer. And Marisol's a dancer so she can be in the chorus. And so that's how Marisol came along to be in my collection. I will say the poor thing did get slightly overshadowed on that day, because that is the day that 2 kittens came crawling out of the woods where we were having our picnic. And that's where we ended up adopting our 2 cats, Moriarty and Moran. So that day I got Marisol, Moriarty, and Moran. I am just now realizing that because of that clock right there, you can probably actually see how long each clip actually is and how much I've edited it. So have fun with that, I guess, if you're really into that kind of observational detail. In September of 2023, I got, at this point, I had several different Truly Me's and dolls in my collection that I had never necessarily planned on, because I was like, I'm going to be a historical collector. That's my line. And at this point, I had kind of started adding modern dolls, who I considered kind of an expansion of the World by Us line, since American Girl wasn't going to be expanding it. And so for my birthday that year, I bought myself number 122, who I named Najud after a dear friend that I had in college, who kind of disappeared off the face of the earth. And I hope if you're out there, Najud, you're doing well. But I named her after Najud. She's a hijabi doll. Yes, she does show a little bit of hair, because again, I did kind of model her after my friend, and that was how my friend wore her hair. And yeah, so I got 122. One of the reasons that I made her hijabi, other than I really wanted a hijabi doll, was because I really love the Joss mold, but I don't particularly like a lot of the eyebrows on the Joss molds these days. And even though these are curtain bangs, you can adjust them so that they kind of cover those eyebrows and give her a sweet expression again, rather than the eyebrows can kind of seem a little mean to me sometimes. So I like that I can cover her eyebrows this way. Also in September of 2023, again, it's my birthday, I met up with my parents, and my mom gave me Felicity. I had not necessarily considered getting Felicity for a while because I genuinely don't really enjoy her stories. Again, I'm not a horse girl, and I also don't particularly care about the period of history with the founding of the United States. It's just for whatever reason, it's not a period of history that I'm particularly... Hello? I'm very red. We'll go on. It's not a period of history that I'm particularly interested in, and I don't particularly care to study it. But I did grow up when, Felicity was out, and she was one of the dolls in the catalog that I was always really staring at and interested in, and I did love all of her clothes. I do appreciate her wardrobe. So my mom got me Felicity. She was the one that the Mattel Felicity, who came in the purple dress, and as you can see, she has those Felicity green eyes, which I don't mind. I think that they're very pretty with the right color combo, and I like her red hair. There we go. There's the light fixing itself. Sure. But yeah, I think she's a very lovely doll, and I was very happy to add her into my collection, even if her stories are not my favorites. So having opened the door to getting truly me's and building out, my own characters with their own stories, I actually had a list at this point of dolls that I was actually keeping an eye out for that I really wanted. And, unsurprisingly, a lot of those dolls were harder to find, or, they're out there, but they're super expensive. And, again, I have a limit on what I'm willing to spend on dolls. And one of the dolls that I really desperately wanted, but hard to find in good condition, hard to find for a good price, was number 58. And 58 is very special to me. I have named her Ariadne, because she was actually, this doll originally belonged to Christy of AG Takes Over. Her and her wife Grace are friends of mine. They knew that I was looking for a 58. They had 2 58s in their collection, and they offered to sell me this one, and for a very, very good price. And I was like, heck yes, I would like her, please. Now, let's go. I want her now. And so we met up at the store one day for, it was some event. I don't remember what event. It was some event. We showed up in the evening. There was cookies. There was a thing. I don't even remember what it was for. Maybe it was for, was it for, no, who was the first doll that came out like stupid early for Girl of the Year? That I didn't get. Not Summer, but the one before her. Anyway, I don't remember. Again, I don't collect Girls of the Year. So I think it might have been that event, or it was an early winter shopping event or something. Anyway, went to the store, met up with them, and they gave me my Ariadne doll, who I adore. I just love her. I recently went to an American Girl doll show in Saline, Michigan. That'll be a whole other video later. And I saw another 58 for only $45, and I was so tempted to get another one, but I don't have duplicates in my collection, because that's a dangerous, slippery slope. So I left her for someone else to have, because just everyone should have a 58 in their collection. She's just such a beautiful doll with such a fun wig and such a sweet face. Because look, it's the Addie face mold. It's just the best. And then December rolls around, and we find out somewhere around there, December of 2023, that the Columbus American Girl store is going to close, and we are all immensely devastated. And I was walking through the store, just kind of looking around, and I realized that, December of 2023 was probably going to be the last time I was going to be able to pick out a doll in person. Chicago's not that far of a drive. I know that, my partner and I could absolutely go to Chicago, periodically throughout the year, but it's very different to make a 6.5, 7-hour drive than a 10-minute drive down the street, because literally the American Girl Columbus store was 10 minutes from my house, 8 minutes from my workplace. So I kind of was thinking about my collection and what I wanted to do, and I realized that having added Felicity into my collection, and with my mom having Maryellen, I was only 2 dolls away from having a doll from every single decade that American Girl had released. And those 2 dolls that I needed were Courtney and Caroline. I was not particularly invested in Courtney at first, so I kind of read part of her first book in the store, and I really like her stories. I think that they're very, very good stories. And so my partner and I talked, he knew that the store was closing and I was devastated. And we essentially built into our budget a line of credit. Like he said, basically, we worked out together like the max amount that I was allowed to spend at the store before it closed so that I could get what I wanted without having to pay shipping, being able to see it in person. And what I ended up choosing to focus on, I got several other things as well, but what I ended up focusing on was getting Courtney and a significant amount of her collection. I basically bought every clothing item in store that I liked. There was one or two pieces of hers that I just genuinely don't like. The fringe coat, I don't like that, so I wasn't going to buy it. But I bought most of her clothes. I got some of her accessories. I had to get the caboodle. I had a caboodle when I was growing up, even though I'm a 90s kid, not an 80s kid. Some things carried over. So I had to get that, and I was very happy to be able to pick out one more doll in store, and that was Courtney, which left me with exactly one last doll to get in terms of having one doll for every decade that American Girl has released. And so for the winter holidays that year, I was delighted to discover that my mom had got me Caroline. Another doll that I had never planned on when I first started collecting. I don't really know anything about the War of 1812. So again, just a period of history that I was not necessarily super engaged with. But again, I got her. I have all of her books. I've read her story. I read a couple of her mysteries. She actually has a really interesting story, and one of the things I've always appreciated about American Girl is that I get to learn history from some of their dolls, and Caroline was actually one of those dolls where I actually got to learn a little bit of history. And she's a lovely doll with gorgeous hair. Mom had found her new in box, so she's in perfect condition. Very lucky to have her. So as we went into 2024, I promised myself it was going to be the year where I bought fewer dolls. And I broke that promise basically immediately. And I actually, just so you know, I ended up buying more dolls in 2024 than I had in previous years. So go me, did a great job. But in February of 2024, some new Truly Me's released. And as soon as I saw her, I bought her. I had to have her. And that was 127, who I named Zara. I love this doll. I don't have a vet because my mother has a vet, and there's no need for us to have duplicates across our collection. I kind of consider, sorry if you're watching this, Mom, I kind of consider my mother's collection like an ancillary collection of mine. I don't know why, I just always have, and so I don't need to have an Yvette, but I always did love the wig, and so when 127 came out with this gorgeous wig, I had to have her, and I had named her even before she came out, and I know her name is Zara, and like everyone has a 127 named Zara, but I like to believe that I was the first, because I announced what I was going to name her when we just had leak pictures of her. And then March of 2024 happened, and March was bad, guys. I got 3 dolls in March of 2024, which is, outside of when I had my first start of my collection, is the most dolls I'd ever gotten in 1 month. I just don't do it, guys. Space things out. The first was Viola, my number 26. I saw her come up on eBay. 26 was on my list as a doll that I wanted because I love the Addie mold. She has the amber eyes and the medium skin tone, kind of a unique combination of features. So she was on my list. And I saw her come up on eBay. She was a doll hospital, like fresh from the doll hospital, and she was like $70. So that was like an auto buy. I had to get her. So this is Viola. And then while I do not collect the Gotti line, I do not consider myself someone who collects the Gotti line. There were a few on my list. And one day I went into the Once Upon a Child, that's like 2 minutes from my workplace, and I found Joss. And Joss was on my list. Now, of all the dolls in my collection that have books, Joss is one whose books I have not read. Marisol is the other. Everyone else, I've read their books. If they have a book, I've read their book. Joss is one that I haven't read because I've heard that the deaf representation is not super great. So for me, deaf representation is really important, and knowing that Joss's books were maybe not the best, I've never actually read them. So I feel bad about that. At some point I want to read them, but I might just get them from the library rather than add them to my collection because of some of the stuff that I've heard about the representation. That being said, I love this doll. The Joss mold is, I think, probably my 3rd favorite mold. Addie and Claudie are 1 and 2. I don't know which order they're in. And then it's the Joss mold. And I do appreciate having consumed much AGTube, knowing that Christy from AG Takes Over really prefers the original Joss because she looks younger and sweeter. And then there's Blaine from Disblaine, who prefers the newer Joss molds because they look older and a little more mature with the eyelashes and stuff. So I personally fall into this camp. I really love the original Joss mold. My dolls are all of my dolls, I keep them between the ages of 9 and 12. So for me, having a sweeter, younger face Joss is actually really great and fits in very well with my collection. At this point, I had certain ideas about characters that I wanted to add into my collection, and I had figured out which dolls I wanted to get to be those characters, right? And so one of them was number 43. And I went online and I saw a listing for a 43 on eBay that had like some minor damage, nothing major that couldn't be fixed up. And I loved her, and I was sharing the listing with my mother, and I was like, I love her. Her name is Elena. Like, I had a full story for her instantly, but I also did not have the funds because I'd already bought Viola and I'd already bought Joss, and 2 dolls in 1 month is extreme extravagance for me. So I was like, there's just no way I'm going to get her, but that's okay because now I know that I'm going to look for 43. And then when I went, I had bought Joss in the Once Upon a Time, and I went back to that Once Upon a Time, and there was a doll up on a top shelf. Like, I'm very short. There was a doll up on a top shelf that kind of looked like it might be 43, and I wasn't sure because I just couldn't see well enough. And in my area, they keep the dolls behind a glass case, so I'm not going to go interrupt some poor retail worker and be like, can you show me this doll that I don't even know if I'm going to get because I don't know if it's the doll that I want? What I did not know what was happening at the time was my mom had bought me this doll, the doll from the eBay listing, because she's like, well, I mean, you've named her. You can't then not have the doll. My mom and I are very, very similar. If it has a name, it's got to come home. So my mom had bought me this doll, and my partner is standing next to me in the Once Upon a Time, frantically messaging my mother, being like, she may have found the doll in person. And Mom is like, oh gosh, okay, we gotta figure out a way to slow her down. So then my partner is messaging Grace, Christy's wife, being like, is this the doll? Because tell her it's not the doll. Tell her, I know she's messaging you right now going, is this the doll? I need you to tell her, even if it is the doll, that it's not the doll, because she already has the doll. She just doesn't know she has the doll. And so Grace is messaging me back going, yeah, no, it's not the doll. It turns out it wasn't the doll, by the way. Again, I'm like taking pictures above my head because I cannot see this doll. I can just see she's a classic mold. She's a little darker, could be dirt, could be the medium skin tone. But yeah, Grace and Christy are like, no, it's not the doll. It's not the doll. Just walk away. Just walk away. And my mom comes down later in March and she's like, I'm giving you your birthday gift now because I don't think we can do this again because that was the worst, most stressful moments of my life. And so she gave me Elena, my number 43. July of 2024 comes around and I find a great listing for a number 62. I've always admired people's number 62s in their collections. I think she's just a really beautiful doll. I think she's a great example of the older Sonali mold. I can tell the difference now. Didn't used to be able to. I can now tell the difference if I take a moment and really, really focus. So I knew I wanted a 62, but 62s can come at a little bit, can be a little pricey. But I found a really good deal on one, and so I added Quinn to my collection. Her name has a fun story that I won't get into now because I'm not telling my doll's stories in this video, but I'm very happy to have her. I just think she's so beautiful and so sweet looking. Again, she's another doll. If you can ever find a 62 for a decent price, I highly recommend her. You know what? I actually think that I got Quinn, my 62, in May of 2024, now that I think about it, because in July of 2024, who I actually got was Charlie. Now, I do not own Marie Grace. I have Cecile instead. Again, I really only was thinking I would have one doll per decade that American Girl has released, and for me, I've read Cecile and Marie Grace's books, and I strongly prefer Cecile and her story. And I never really liked the Marie Grace doll. But I found a Marie Grace on eBay for like $30, completely trashed. Doll had had a terrible hack job haircut to her. But the doll itself looked to be in good condition. And I've always wanted to do a custom, a wig swap. And so I bought her with the intention of making her into a doll that I could swap the wigs on. And my mom and I, can you tell that I'm an only child yet? Have you figured out that I'm an only child who's very, very close to my mom? I feel like at this point you've probably pieced that together. But I was, I shared the listing with my mom. I was like, I just bought this doll. I don't even really have a full story for her yet. And my mom was like, her name is, oh, I think I said her name is Charlie. I do think I said her name was Charlie to my mom. And my mom was like, her name is Charlie. She likes hiking and camping, and she cut her hair off herself, and that's why the doll's wig is all butchered, because she got sick of her long hair and wanted to be able to take independence and do all these things. And so I ended up having to get a wig that was short, because I did love that story and it was very cute, and she came very fully formed in terms of personality. And so this is Charlie, a custom Marie Grace doll. And then I had a complete impulse buy. Absolute impulse buy. Didn't even necessarily have this doll on my list of dolls that I was really considering, because she can be very expensive and harder to find. But I got number 54. I named her Ramona. She was not a good deal. She is the most I have ever paid for a doll outside of my CYO. My CYO is the most I've ever paid for a doll, and she came very, very close to the same amount of money. Don't care. I love her face. Look at her cheeks are just so pudgy, and I love a good pudgy faced doll. And she's so sweet. I have really enjoyed my time with her. I got her in September of 2024. I think I basically bought her as a birthday gift to myself. So happy to have her. She is the one with the eye notches. And just look at that face. And dolls with bangs. Bangs. I like bangs. Maybe it's vanity, maybe, I don't know, but I really like a doll with bangs. We are almost done. 2 more dolls, and then that's it. For now. So then in November of 2024, the new Disney dolls came out, and while I'm generally not particularly interested in getting the Disney dolls as Disney characters, when Moana came out, I love the character Moana, but this doll is so beautiful. I mean, I didn't have a Corinne mold yet. I'm not someone who's a completionist when it comes to the molds, but I did feel kind of bad about not having a Corinne mold. And so now I have a Corinne mold. She has a beautiful skin tone. I love the color of her vinyl. She's just gorgeous. I named her Tewila. Hilariously, I named her Tewila. I ordered her, and then the same day or the next day or something, Disblain put out a video where he had named a doll Tewila, and I was like, are you kidding me? That's hilarious. That's so funny. But now I'm like, everybody's going to think I copied Blaine, and I didn't copy Blaine. It doesn't actually matter. People, their names, they're not copyrighted. But I named her Tewila. I think she's beautiful. I have her hair in a braid, because I do think, while this wig, you have to be a little gentle with it. It is pretty versatile. There are things you can do. The lighting is so weird, and I am so sorry, but I don't know how to fix that. I'm new, but I love her. I haven't gotten to do as much with her yet as I'd like to, just because I've only had her for a few months, and the winter depression, the seasonal blues are bad. But I'm hoping to do more with her soon. I really love her. She's just so pretty. And then the final doll in my collection, we made it, folks. We're on doll number 38, is number 123, who I named Olamide. I very specifically, I wanted 123 because I love the McKenna face mold. I think it's adorable. Reminds me of one of my students. I love it. And I wanted the other doll, but I very specifically did not want the Truly Me 123 that you can find in stores. I wanted the donut Costco doll. There's something slightly different about the donut version from the Truly Me in store version. I think it's the lip paint. I think there's something different about the way the lip paint is set. And I know some people don't like it. I think it's because the actual fullness of her lip, the paint doesn't actually cover the fullness of the lip. But I just think it makes her look so sweet. So I really, really wanted her. I didn't really want the full donut set. Other than the blanket, the rest of it was kind of not of interest to me. So I had been on eBay. I found several listings that were just the doll for really reasonable prices, between $50 and $70. To me, that's a reasonable price for an American Girl doll if she's in good condition. These were all, brand new dolls, just without the accessories. But it was the winter holidays. I know that my Mom typically gets me a doll for the holidays. Don't know which doll it's going to be. So I didn't buy the donut doll that had my particular eye on. And it's a good thing I didn't, because it was the exact doll my mom got me for the holidays. The exact listing, even. My mom was like, yeah, I know you sent me the listing. And I was like, I already have that in my cart. So this is Olamide. I really love this particular iteration of the Makena mold. I like that I have some variation with the Makena mold so that, you know, she does look very different to me than Makena. And I did also remove her bottom lashes. It's something about when they put the bottom lashes on the Makena mold, they do it with like a really dark, almost like eyeliner thing. And it just does not appeal to me. I don't like my dolls wearing smoky eye, essentially, because my dolls in my collection are younger. Ola is 11 years old in my collection. So this is doll number 38, and she is the last doll that I've added to my collection, which is not going to be too much longer because I actually have a doll on order, and I will be doing my own short version of an unboxing at some point for her. So that will be doll number 39. But right now, I have 38 dolls in my collection. I consider myself to have a mid-sized collection. There's people out there with over 100 dolls. They have large collections. There's people out there with 2 or 3. They have smaller, wonderful, more intimate collections. I definitely have a mid collection. And I like my collection. I feel like I've been very thoughtful about what dolls I've been bringing in. I'm not someone who can bring a doll in and then, you know, sell her or give her away or swap her for a new one because of how I bond with my dolls and because of how I give them stories. That's no shade to anybody else out there who does it that way. That's just not how I can personally and emotionally handle doll collecting. I hope that you've enjoyed this little peek into my collection. This is my first video. I'm giving this a whirl. I've wanted to for a couple of years now, but quite bluntly, my partner is in theater rehearsal right now, and I'm between grad school classes, so my evenings are very, very open. So I thought I would give this a whirl, see how I feel about it, see how it goes. Really appreciate you watching this video and taking the time. I can't even imagine how long this is. I've only edited the first little bit so far, and it was already like 25 minutes, and I wanted to die. So if you've made it this far, I appreciate you. I appreciate the time you've taken and spent with me, and I hope to see you in a future video. Bye!